Are they priests? Are they monks? Are they knights? What are they?
As an English chronicler called them a certain new monster.
We begin with something a little more interesting. A time of whispered vows, sharpened steel, and secrets buried in the sand. We're stepping into the armor of the Knights Templar. Not the myth or the conspiracy theory, the real order.
The Templars in the 1120s, if they were going to expand, what they really needed was troops, high-quality recruits, money, and land in Western Europe that would supply them with the resources they need to carry on their vocation.
And spoiler alert, it's not as glorious as the movies made it out to be. Before we begin, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoyed this story. And let me know what you've always known about the Knights Templar in the comments.
They effectively became Europe's first standing army since the days of the Roman Empire. And, Rome had collapsed in the 5th century, so we're talking, the first standing army in about 600 or 700 years. So this was a really radical shift. You had a permanent military force in the East defending Christendom, defending Christian interests.
Now dim the lights. Let the silence wrap around you like a woolen cloak. Because the year is 1120. You are no longer you. You are now one of them. Congratulations. You've just woken up in Jerusalem, the year 1120 AD. The good news? You're a knight of the Temple of Solomon. The bad news? You slept in your armor again, on a pallet of wood, with a blanket that smells like a wet goat died in it. It's cold, it's hard, and your back is permanently negotiating terms with gravity. The bell tolls from the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Time to rise. Not for breakfast. That's a bowl of something gray the cook insists is lentils. But you're 60% sure it's just old trench water with breadcrumbs. No, you rise for duty. You are one of 9. Just 9 poor knights, sworn to protect the endless wave of pilgrims staggering into Jerusalem, wide-eyed and sandal-footed. Most can't fight, many can't read, and they're all blissfully unaware that every path into the city is lined with thieves, Saracen raiders, and men who'd happily trade your head for a handful of silver. You have no wealth, no wife, no property. You took vows of poverty, obedience, and chastity, not in that order, but you regret them all equally on mornings like this. Your barracks? The former Al-Aqsa Mosque, now claimed by King Baldwin and handed to your order. Rumor says it stands where Solomon's temple once rose. You're told that makes this holy ground. All you know is it's drafty, smells like camel sweat, and echoes like cavern when Brother Jeff snores. Still, you're part of something new, something blessed. You're no mere soldier. You're a poor fellow soldier of Christ, guardian of the Holy Land. And if you're lucky, you'll die well. If you're blessed, you'll live long enough to matter. Welcome to the Knights Templar. The world that birthed the Knight Templar was one of faith, power, and transformation. As the 11th century ended, Europe stood at a pivotal juncture defined by feudal fragmentation, religious fervor, and growing ambition. Power lay scattered among monarchs, nobles, and vassals within a feudal system that bound society through land-based obligations. While political authority remained decentralized, the Catholic Church emerged as a unifying and dominant force. Strengthened by reforms and centralized papal authority, the Church had so much power over daily life, shaping medieval thought, politics, and spiritual practice. At the same time, the Islamic world across the Mediterranean flourished as a beacon of intellectual and cultural advancement. From Baghdad to Cordoba, Muslim scholars preserved ancient knowledge and pioneered developments in medicine, mathematics, and architecture. Jerusalem, a city sacred to Christians, Muslims, and Jews alike, had long been accessible to pilgrims despite shifting regional powers. However, the Seljuk Turks' military conquests disrupted this fragile balance, threatening Christian access to holy sites and inciting widespread alarm across Europe. In response to the Seljuk threat, Byzantine Emperor Alexios I appealed to Pope Urban II for military aid. At the Council of Clermont in 1095, Urban's call for a crusade stirred Europe. Promising spiritual salvation and material gain, he attracted knights to channel their violence into a holy mission. The First Crusade, launched in 1096, led to the brutal capture of Jerusalem in 1099 and the creation of fragile Christian states in the East. These territories, under constant threat, lacked adequate protection for pilgrims. Amid this volatility, a French knight, Hugues de Payens, proposed a new solution: a religious military order dedicated to safeguarding Christian travelers. By 1119, the Knights Templar was born, and you became one of their members to shape medieval society and become one of history's most enigmatic and powerful institutions. In the twilight of the early 12th century, as whispers of peril haunted the roads to sacred lands, a quiet force began to stir. Beneath the sun-warmed stones of Jerusalem, where ancient chaos still clung to the Temple Mount, 9 knights knelt in solemn vow. Led by the steadfast de Payens, these warriors were no ordinary men. They bound their lives not to conquest or glory, but to devotion, discipline, and a higher cause. Beneath white mantles and within humble walls gifted by King Baldwin II, a new brotherhood was born. Their purpose was clear, yet unprecedented: to protect pilgrims on their sacred journeys. They had limited means and no grandeur, living modestly, at times sharing horses, relying on donations, and guarding the roads between the coast and the city with quiet resolve. Their base on the Temple Mount, granted by King Baldwin II, carried deep symbolic weight. It was built upon the ruins of Solomon's Temple and placed them at the spiritual heart of Jerusalem. From this sacred foundation came their name, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. The Templars were unique, monks who fought. They lived under a strict code called the Latin Rule, written by Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, basically a medieval spiritual influencer. They were forbidden to gamble, curse, or even show off. Templar horses were to be shared, and their hair was kept short. No hunting, no kissing women, even their own mothers and sisters. They weren't here to live. They were here to serve and die. For nearly a decade, no one cared about them. But a word of their dedication spread, and questions arose about this unusual blend of martial service and monastic life. To secure recognition and ensure their future, Hugues journeyed to Europe. There, at the Council of Troyes in 1129, with the support of Bernard of Clairvaux, the order received formal approval. The Knights Templar had taken their first steps into history. From the modest beginnings on the Temple Mount, the Knights Templar evolved into something far greater than a simple protective brotherhood. What began as a small circle of monks, turned warriors, soon expanded into one of the most powerful institutions of medieval Christendom. As the Crusades deepened, the Templars became a formidable presence on the battlefield, known for discipline, unshakable courage, and a certain harsh resolve. They fought not only in the Holy Land, but also across the Iberian Peninsula, defending Christian territories in Spain. Their white mantles, now bearing a crimson cross, moved at the front of great armies, symbols of faith and fire. Yet their influence reached far beyond the sword. With every gift from a grateful king, every estate from a noble patron, their holdings grew. Castles, vineyards, farmland, and workshops spanning from England to Jerusalem. This network of land and loyalty formed the bedrock of a more silent, but no less potent, transformation. In time, the Templars came to master the flow of coin as much as the clash of steel. They developed a financial network so advanced it functioned like an early international bank. Pilgrims entrusted them with wealth for safekeeping, and monarchs borrowed from their treasures to fund wars and ambitions. They created letters of credit that allowed travelers to withdraw funds in distant lands, a system centuries ahead of its time. By the 13th century, the Knights Templar were bankers, landlords, diplomats, and warriors. A multinational corporation wrapped in chainmail. Cloaked in mystery, they operated with both spiritual authority and wordly acumen. Landlords, envoys, protectors. It is in this dual identity, monk and knight, banker and warrior, that the lasting fascination with the Templars endures. While the popular image of the Knights Templar evokes chainmail-clad warriors thundering across the Holy Land, their mastery extended far beyond the battlefield. By this mid-12th century, these warrior monks had quietly transformed into formidable mariners, forging a naval force that reshaped power across the Mediterranean. In a world where the survival of Christian strongholds in the East depended on fragile roots, the Templars answered with ingenuity, establishing a fleet not only to transport men and supplies, but to dominate the seas. Their ships sailed from fortified harbors like Acre and Tyre, their sails catching the same winds that once bore ancient traders and explorers. From the shadowy coves where pirates once hid to the open seas patrolled by Muslim fleets, the Templars carved out safe passage with grit and precision. They had different vessels, swift galleys, heavy cargo naves, and sturdy pilgrim transports, each crafted with hybrid designs drawing from both Western and Eastern traditions. In their hands, the sea became a new frontier of protection and power. Templar mariners were trained in navigation and naval warfare, and operated with a monastic discipline adapted to life at sea. Beneath the stars, their lanterns signaled through darkness. These seaborne brothers ferried pilgrims, rescued the wounded, and blockaded enemy ports with equal devotion. Their influence outlasted the Crusades themselves. Even when they lost the Holy Land, their naval legacy still sailed westward to Portugal, where the Order of Christ would carry their flame into the Atlantic. In the quiet rhythm of waves and the silent sweep of sails, the Templars mastered more than war. They mastered movement, connection, and endurance. They were guardians not only of faith and fortress, but of the ocean roads that linked worlds. The Knights Templar were also the quiet architects of a financial system that would echo far beyond their time. At the heart of this transformation lay a simple yet profound dilemma. How could travelers safely carry money across vast and perilous landscapes? The Templars' answer was both elegant and revolutionary. A pilgrim might deposit funds at a commentary in their homeland, receiving a cryptic document that outsiders could not decipher. It could later be redeemed in another land for equivalent currency. This was a financial innovation that made long-distance travel and commerce vastly safer and more practical. With time, their services expanded. They became custodians of royal treasuries and financiers to kings. Louis VII of France, having witnessed their capabilities during the Second Crusade, entrusted them with the royal coffers. In England, King John and Henry III followed suit. Their Paris temple soon functioned as France's de facto national treasury. Behind its fortified walls, guarded day and night, lay chests of coin, ledgers of account, and the silent pulse of a medieval economy in motion. The Templars' financial acumen was astonishing. Long before double-entry bookkeeping was widely known in Europe, they employed meticulous accounting practices. separated client funds from their own, and maintained a network of literate administrators across continents. Even Jewish and Muslim merchants were drawn to their services, despite the religious divides. Yet, not all were pleased. Traditional moneylenders, bound by taxes and regulation, resented the order's special privileges. Church critics questioned the spiritual integrity of monks who dealt in coin and credit. And as their wealth grew, so did their vulnerability. In 1307, King Philip IV of France, heavily indebted to the order, struck a fatal blow, contributing to the dramatic downfall of the Knights Templar. Unlike traditional monastic orders, the Templars embraced an innovative manorial tenant system. On land gifted by nobles, local farmers worked under standardized leases, while vast flocks and rich estates yielded wool, grain, oil, and fine horses. At the beginning, the Templars swore vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, seeking to protect pilgrims and serve a higher divine order. But as they rose to become one of the most powerful institutions in medieval Christendom, handling royal treasuries, financing crusades, and establishing a complex economic infrastructure, the temptation of power quietly crept in. With landholdings stretching from the English countryside to the plains of Outremer, and control over vast sums of money and property, some members inevitably strayed from what they previously believed in. Accusations surfaced in the early 14th century, with claims of secret rituals, heretical practices, and moral lapses. Till this day, it's unclear whether these charges were true or politically motivated. It might as well be both. In 1291, the city of Acre, the last Christian stronghold in the Holy Land, crumbled beneath the advance of Mamluk forces. The Knight Templar, forged in the fires of crusade, watched their spiritual homeland slip away. The Holy Land, the heart of their vow, was now beyond their reach. Displaced and oriented after losing the war, the Templars returned to Europe, no longer crusaders but custodians of immense wealth, land, and influence. They had banks, marine power, and influence. But without the war in the East to justify their existence, questions began to arise. What was their purpose now? They had become rich, yes, perhaps too rich. Their coffers overflowed, their estates flourished, and their influence unsettled both church and crown. Whispers grew in courtly chambers and cloistered halls. Rumors curled like smoke through the air, murmurs of secrecy, pride, and hidden rites. The Templars, who were once warriors of God, had outlived their war. They were no longer needed, and this caused them to be eyed by formidable leaders, especially a greedy king. The downfall of the Templars did not only come on the battlefield, but due to greed and shadowed ambition. Kings borrowed from them, nobles envied them, and above all, they answered not to monarchs, but to the Pope alone. King Philip IV of France, known as Philip the Fair, was both shrewd and ruthless. Deep in debt to the Templars from years of war and extravagant court expenses, he viewed the order not as allies or relics of past glory. He saw their loss at the city of Acre as an opportunity. By destroying them, he could get both security and coins, and so he struck. At dawn on Friday, October 13th, 1307, Philip ordered the arrest of every Templar in France. Knights, servants, and masters were seized, shackled, and interrogated. The charges were dramatic: heresy, devil worship, spitting on the cross, secret rites, and the worship of a mysterious figure named Baphomet. Most of it was false. Confessions came under the lash and flame of torture. Truth was bent to serve power. Yet, the accusations could not be easily unmade. Pope Clement V, caught between spiritual duty and political pressure, disbanded the order in 1312. The Templars' vast holdings were seized. Some were absorbed into other orders. Many disappeared into quiet exile. Others languished in prisons. And then, the final flame. On March 18, 1314, Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master, was led to the Ile de la Cité in Paris. Bound to a stake, he faced death with defiant calm. Legend says that, from the flames, he called upon Pope Clement and King Philip to answer for their betrayal, cursing them to receive judgment from God within the year. Strangely, they did. Clement died a month later. Philip followed by year's end. And so ended the Templars. After the Templars were officially dissolved in 1312, their physical presence faded. But their influence was far from extinguished. Some former knights found sanctuary in other orders, particularly in Spain and Portugal, where other groups like the Order of Christ carried forward aspects of the Templar tradition under new names. Others, perhaps, slipped into the shadows. Stories emerged of Templars going underground, guarding ancient secrets, protecting hidden relics. Over time, mystery bloomed around their memory. Legends grew of buried treasure beneath ruined chapels, of secret rituals carried out beneath the moon, and the elusive Holy Grail said to rest in their keeping. The supposed worship of a figure called Baphomet only deepened the intrigue. And centuries later, Freemasonry would be linked to the Templars, causing more speculation. Even superstition took root. The fear of Friday the 13th? Many trace it to that fateful morning in 1307, when the knights were arrested en masse. Beyond the myth, their real legacy remains. Their innovations in finance, like letters of credit, and international banking systems paved the way for the great banking families of Renaissance Italy. Their story continues to inspire and puzzle scholars, writers, and dreamers alike. The true legacy of the Knights Templar lies not in the castles they built or the battles they fought, but in the lasting imprints they left behind. They reshaped institutions, pioneered financial systems, and imprinted their symbolism in the fabric of Western imagination. Long after their fortress crumbled, their influence persisted in architecture, governance, and myth. Their story continues to echo through time. In defending territory, they ended up forging ideas and structures that still shape how we remember, build, and believe today.